Pushpin disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction created for emotional and dramatic storytelling. Any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. The story may involve themes of betrayal, emotional conflict, and regret. Reader discretion is advised. The night began like any other. I had just come home from work, kicked off my shoes, and was about to heat leftovers when I saw his name light up my phone screen, Daniel. My heart stopped for a second. It had been nearly a year since we broke up. No calls. No messages. Nothing but silence. And now, out of nowhere, can we talk? Just one last time. Please. I hesitated. Every part of me knew I shouldn't respond, but curiosity has a way of digging its claws in. My fingers betrayed me and typed back, okay. When? His reply was instant. Tonight. My place. Just for a few minutes. 100 emotions swirled in my chest. What could he possibly want to say after all this time? I convinced myself it was closure. Maybe I needed it too. So I changed clothes, tied my hair back, and drove to his apartment in silence. The city lights felt dull, like the world had dimmed just for this moment. When I knocked on his door, he opened it almost immediately. He looked different. Not sick, but worn. His eyes were tired, and there was something fragile in the way he smiled. Hey, he said softly. Hi, I replied, forcing a casual tone. The apartment smelled the same, his cologne mixed with the faint scent of coffee. Familiar, but strange now. We sat for a while. Talked about nothing. Weather. Work. Jokes that didn't quite land. It almost felt normal. Like we were two old friends catching up after too long. Then I got up to leave. That's when it happened. I turned to grab my coat, and as I stepped toward the door, I heard it, the unmistakable click of a lock turning behind me. I froze. I slowly turned back. Daniel stood there, eyes not angry or threatening, but heavy, like he was about to carry a boulder with his words. I just need you to stay for a minute, he said quietly. His hand was still on the doorknob, the key still inside. My heart started racing, but not out of fear. Out of confusion, anxiety, and something else, dread. This wasn't just a casual talk. This was something else. And I knew, in that instant, that I was about to hear something that would change everything. The room suddenly felt colder, like the walls themselves had pulled in tighter. The quiet was so thick, I could hear my own heartbeat. I stood still, watching Daniel's fingers slowly slip off the doorknob. He didn't look dangerous, just different. Like someone who had aged in ways time couldn't measure. He motioned gently toward the couch. Please, just sit. I swear, I'm not going to hurt you. I just need to tell you something I should have said a long time ago. I sat down hesitantly, my body tense and my eyes locked on his every move. He walked over slowly and took a seat on the armchair across from me, keeping a strange sort of distance. His hands were trembling slightly, like he'd been carrying this weight for far too long. For a few seconds, he said nothing. The silence stretched on, thick with meaning. It wasn't the kind of pause that fills space, it was the kind that builds pressure. I finally broke the silence. Daniel, what is this? Why did you lock the door? He looked at me, and for a brief moment, I saw it, guilt. Raw, unfiltered guilt etched into every corner of his expression. Because if I didn't, you'd leave before I finish saying what I need to, he said, his voice low. And I need you to hear this. All of it. My mind raced with possibilities. Was he sick? Was someone else in trouble? Was this about money? Or worse, was this something criminal? He reached into the side table drawer and pulled out a small wooden box. I recognized it. It was the same one I had once gifted him, a birthday present years ago. He opened it slowly and took out a crumpled letter, then held it tightly in his hand without opening it. I've read this 100 times, and I still can't decide if I should burn it or read it out loud. He exhaled deeply. But maybe you deserve the truth, even if it's ugly. The air was heavy. I could feel something huge looming on the edge of his words. He glanced up. I never told you the real reason we broke up. My breath caught. What do you mean? You said you needed space. That it wasn't working anymore. He shook his head slowly. That was a lie. A coward's excuse. I didn't want to admit what I'd done. But keeping it inside hasn't given me peace. It's made it worse. And now I have to say it. The silence between us thickened again. My heart pounded louder than before. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. I betrayed you. And not just in a moment of weakness. It was something worse, something ongoing. My throat went dry. I felt myself bracing for an emotional blow I hadn't seen coming. The locked door behind me suddenly made sense. This wasn't a conversation. This was a confession. I stared at Daniel in disbelief, trying to process the weight of his words. I betrayed you. That sentence alone was a wrecking ball crashing through the fragile wall of peace I had tried to build after our breakup. My body stiffened, my breath caught somewhere between anger and fear. I didn't speak. I couldn't. I just waited, watched as he sat there, guilt swallowing him whole. He looked at the letter again, but didn't open it. I didn't invite you here to justify what I did, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. There is no excuse. I need to stop hiding from it. And from you. I shook my head slowly. Just say it, Daniel. Please. I didn't realize I was gripping the cushion beside me, my fingers digging into the fabric. He closed his eyes and inhaled deeply, as if the next sentence would tear something out of him. I was seeing someone while we were together. I froze. A pit opened in my stomach. It was every fear I had buried during our relationship. The late replies. The sudden errands. The days when he pulled away emotionally. All of it made sense now, too much sense. Who? I asked, my voice shaky but firm. He didn't answer right away. He stared at the floor like it might swallow him if he held his gaze long enough. When he looked back up, his eyes were red. It wasn't random. It wasn't just anyone. His voice cracked. It was your sister, Emma. The room didn't spin, it collapsed. For a moment, I thought I misheard him. I blinked, waiting for the punchline. Waiting for the correction. But none came. You're lying, I said, standing abruptly. Tell me you're lying. He shook his head slowly, as if even he hated the truth he carried. I wish I were. God, I wish I were. My mind spiraled. Emma, my own sister. She was the person I had leaned on most when Daniel and I broke up. She had held my hand, dried my tears, told me he didn't deserve me. And all the while, she was with him? How long? I asked coldly. He hesitated, then answered. Almost 6 months before we ended things. It didn't start as anything serious, but it became more. More? I laughed bitterly. So what now? You called me here to unload your guilt? To wipe your conscience clean before you vanish again? He looked pained. No. I called you here because I couldn't live with it anymore. I needed you to know the truth from me, not from someone else. Especially now. I looked at him, shattered. Now? Why no? That's when he looked down at his shaking hands and said the words that would lead to the next, even darker revelation. The seconds after his confession were suffocating. My body felt hollow, like the shock had sucked all the air out of me. My sister. My blood. The one person I had trusted through everything. And Daniel, he had been the center of my world. I looked at him, sitting across from me, no longer a familiar face. Just a stranger wearing the skin of someone I once loved. He swallowed hard. I know what this sounds like. And I know you'll never forgive me. You're right, I snapped, my voice rising. I won't. Because it's not just what you did. It's who you did it with. She was my sister, Daniel. My sister. His face twisted in shame. He didn't try to defend himself. At first it was just emotional, talking, texting. It started when you and I were struggling. I didn't even realize what was happening. I cut him off, furious. Don't say that. Don't try to make this sound accidental. You had choices. You made them. He nodded. I know. I did. His eyes welled with tears. But I never stopped loving you. Not even when I was with her. That sentence made me recoil. It felt like a slap disguised as a hug. Then why? Why do it at all? I asked, barely keeping my voice from breaking. He was silent. The kind of silence that screams guilt. I started pacing. The room was shrinking. I wanted to leave, but my legs felt numb. Does she know you're telling me this? I asked. He shook his head slowly. No. She doesn't even know I kept this letter. Or that I've been wanting to tell you for months. I couldn't believe it. All those nights I cried on Emma's shoulder, she had looked me in the eyes and told me I deserved better. And all along, she was the one tearing my world apart behind closed doors. Were you going to marry her? I asked, half hoping for a no. Daniel paused. We talked about it. But I never proposed. I couldn't. It felt wrong. I scoffed bitterly. Wrong didn't stop you before. He didn't argue. Instead, he opened the letter he'd been gripping tightly. The paper looked worn, the corners creased from being folded too many times. He held it up like it was a ghost. This is the letter I wrote to you months ago, the one I never sent. I kept it because I wasn't ready to face the fallout. Until now. I didn't reach for it. I didn't want to read his carefully crafted apologies. I wanted the truth, raw and unfiltered. And somehow I knew there was more. I looked him in the eye. Why are you telling me all this now, Daniel? What changed? He lowered the letter slowly, and his next words were quiet but heavy. Because I'm dying. And just like that, the entire conversation shifted again. His words struck me like ice water down my spine. Because I'm dying. Everything stopped. My heartbeat, my breath, the whirlwind of fury that had taken over me just seconds ago. I stared at him, numb, unable to process what I'd just heard. What are you talking about? I asked, my voice almost childlike. Daniel leaned back in the chair, his eyes glossy and distant. I was diagnosed 3 months ago. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. They say I have less than 6 months, maybe less than 3. The room went silent. Not just quiet, but heavy, like the weight of everything was pressing down on us both. I wanted to speak, to scream, to cry. But all I could do was sit there, paralyzed by disbelief. I didn't tell anyone, he continued. Not Emma. Not my parents. No one. You're the first person I've said it out loud to. I blinked. Why me? He smiled faintly, but it was more sadness than warmth. Because the truth belongs to you. I stole something from you that I can never return. But this, my honesty, it's the only thing I have left to give. His words stung in 1,000 places. There was something so twisted about it all. The man who betrayed me, who broke me in ways I never thought possible, was now sitting across from me, vulnerable, broken himself. You think telling me this makes anything better? I asked, trying to hold back tears. No, he said quickly. It doesn't. I didn't invite you here to ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just couldn't leave this world with you believing that you were never enough. I covered my face with my hands, trying to make sense of the chaos spiraling inside me. This was the same man who shattered my heart, now telling me he was running out of time. My instinct was to harden, to keep my distance. But something deeper, more painful, rooted in all the love I once felt, kept pulling me toward him. So what, Daniel? I said finally. You lock me in here, drop a bomb like this, and expect what? Sympathy. He looked me straight in the eyes. No, I expect nothing. I needed you to know the truth. You were the only person I ever really loved. And I needed you to hear that before I disappear for good. The words hung between us, raw and unforgiving. The locked door behind me wasn't a prison anymore, it was a wall between who he had been and who he had become. I'm not asking for anything, he said again, softer now. I'm just trying to let go before the end. And maybe give you something real before I go. I didn't know what to feel. Anger. Sadness. Pity. Love. Hate. It was all too much. And yet, I stayed. The minutes after his revelation dragged like hours. The silence between us wasn't empty, it was full of unsaid words, twisted emotions, and memories I no longer knew what to do with. Part of me wanted to storm out, to slam the door behind me and never look back. But another part, the part still tethered to who he used to be, remained frozen in place. I looked at him, really looked at him. His eyes were sunken, his skin paler than I remembered. The weight loss, the trembling hands, the way he kept rubbing his chest when he thought I wasn't looking, it all made sense now. He wasn't just guilty. He was dying. And yet, that didn't erase what he had done. You say you loved me, I said quietly. But if that was true, how could you do something so cruel? He exhaled, pain written all over his face. Because I was selfish. Because I didn't want to be alone. I was weak and I hated who I had become. But I never stopped loving you, even when I didn't deserve to. My chest tightened. That line, "I never stopped loving you," echoed like a cruel melody. I wanted to reject it, to call it a lie. But something in his voice told me it wasn't. That was the worst part. I believed him. And believing him made it hurt even more. "Do you know what it felt like?" I said, standing. "To cry to her, Emma, about you? To have her tell me I was strong? That I'd be okay? While you two were together." He winced like I had slapped him. I think about it every night. I replay those moments in my head and I hate myself for every single one. I turned away from him, staring at the bookshelf we once filled together. I remembered picking out books on lazy weekends, arguing over whether to alphabetize them. It felt like a different lifetime, like that girl, that version of me, had died when our relationship ended. But now she was here, trapped in the same room, with all the same pain, resurfacing. "I don't know what you want me to say," I whispered. "Nothing," he replied. "You don't owe me anything. I just needed you to hear it. From me." There it was again, that quiet desperation in his voice. Not for pity, but for understanding. It was the kind of sorrow that came too late. The kind that didn't mend wounds, only exposed how deep they truly were. I wiped away a tear, even though I didn't want him to see me cry. "You broke me, Daniel. You and her. I don't know how to forgive that. I don't even know if I can." He nodded slowly, accepting it. "I wouldn't forgive me either." And then he stood, walked toward me, but not too close, and said softly, "But before I go, there's one more thing you need to hear." I turned toward him, bracing myself for the words that would follow. He stood just a few feet away, his shoulders slouched, as though the weight of the moment was too much to bear. My heart pounded in my chest like a warning drum, telling me to brace myself for whatever final truth was coming. Daniel took a deep breath, then exhaled shakily. "I know I've already said more than you ever wanted to hear. But there's one thing I've carried for too long, one thing I have to say before I leave this world." I didn't answer. I didn't nod. I just stared, bracing myself for yet another blow. Then he said it. "Even while I was hurting you, I never stopped loving you." I blinked, stunned. The words rang in my ears, heavy and unforgettable. I had anticipated many things, excuses, regrets, even tears, but not this. Not a sentence so simple and cruelly sincere. It was as if his soul had cracked open and the rawest part of him had spilled out. My throat tightened. "You loved me," I whispered, almost in disbelief. "While you were lying? While you were with her?" He nodded, tears forming in his eyes. "Yes. That's what made it so unbearable. I kept telling myself I'd fix it. That I'd end it. That I'd come back to you and somehow make it right. But the longer I waited, the worse it got. And by the time I realized I'd lost you, it was too late." I wanted to scream at him, to shake him and ask how someone could love you and still destroy you at the same time. But part of me already knew the answer. People are complicated. Love doesn't always look like kindness. Sometimes, it's a hurricane wearing the mask of home. I turned away, tears now sliding freely down my cheeks. "You say you loved me, Daniel. But real love doesn't betray. Real love doesn't lie and sleep beside you while hiding a knife behind its back." He lowered his gaze. "I know. That's why I couldn't die without saying it out loud. Not because I think it changes anything, but because you deserve the truth, and you deserve to know that you were never the reason I strayed. You were never the problem. I was." That sentence broke something in me. So many nights I had laid in bed wondering if I wasn't enough. If I was too distant, too emotional, too boring. And now, hearing him say that he was the flaw, not me, it didn't fix anything, but it was a kind of closure I didn't expect to get. I looked at him one last time. His eyes were full of sorrow, but also peace, as if, in speaking those words, he had finally released the burden he'd carried. "You'll never hear from me again," he said softly. "I promise. But you'll always have this moment, if nothing else." And I knew, with chilling certainty, that no matter how much time passed, I would never forget what he just said. The silence that followed his words was unlike any I'd experienced before. It wasn't awkward or tense, it was final. Like a closing scene in a film where nothing more needs to be said. Daniel didn't try to hug me. He didn't reach out. He just stood there, hollow and still, letting the weight of our shattered history rest between us. I walked toward the door slowly. He didn't stop me this time. There was no click of a lock, no more confessions. Just the soft sound of my hand on the doorknob and the quiet shuffle of my footsteps crossing the threshold of something that would never be the same again. As I stepped outside into the cool night air, I didn't cry. Not right away. My body was too exhausted, my mind too overwhelmed. I stood at the top of the stairs, gripping the railing, trying to breathe. The stars above blinked indifferently down at me, like the universe had watched this story unfold a million times before. I turned back one last time, glancing at the door he had closed behind me. He didn't come after me, and I didn't go back. The days that followed blurred into one another. I didn't tell anyone what had happened. Not even Emma. Especially not Emma. She called me once, left a cheerful voicemail, as if nothing had happened. I listened to it and deleted it. Some things didn't deserve answers. I didn't reply to Daniel either. Not that he tried. He had kept his promise. I never heard from him again. Not a call. Not a text. Not even a final goodbye. 3 months later, I found out through a mutual friend that he had passed away. Quietly. Alone. And yet, I cried. Not because I forgave him. Not because I missed him. But because he had been part of a version of my life that no longer existed, and now he was truly gone. His absence closed a door that had already been splintered, but now could never reopen. But the thing that stayed with me the most, the part that echoed through my thoughts on sleepless nights, were his final words. Even while I was hurting you, I never stopped loving you. It was the most painful sentence I'd ever heard. Because it reminded me that love isn't always kind. It isn't always good. And, sometimes, the people who love us are the ones who hurt us the most, not out of hate, but out of their own brokenness. I've carried those words ever since. They didn't heal me. They didn't fix anything. But they taught me something powerful. That closure doesn't come from answers. It comes from acceptance. From knowing the truth, sitting with it, and still choosing to move forward. And even now, when I look back on that night, the door clicking shut, the weight of betrayal, the face of a man I once trusted, I remember how it all ended. And the words I'll never forget. 67.